Hey guys, welcome to the next section of the Getting Started with Spring 5 course. And this section we're going to take a look at testing with Spring Framework. So what we will learn? First of all, we will take a look at the Spring and support of it of JUnit 5, which is the latest version of one of the most popular framework for unit testing. Of course, each application has some integration and some complex logic, and we cannot rely only for unit testing of our classes. So we need to have an integration testing in terms of the Spring framework. And of course, we need to take a look at it as well. And of course, most of our applications are web-based, so we need to know how actually we can perform testing of our web controllers in the most efficient way. So let's start with overviewing what actually Spring does to support unit testing. First of all, when we are talking about unit testing, we need to understand that units is about to test classes in isolation, which means that if our class have some dependencies, then we need to replace them with some mocks or some fake implementation of external dependencies, so that our focus is our class logic, not its dependency. And in order to do this, Spring provides several ways to achieve this isolation. First one is environment. Imagine the situation when we have our class and it depends on some Spring-based configuration of environment. And in order to decouple our test from this dependency, Spring provides some mocking for this. First one is a mock environment and the second one is mock property source. Mock environment actually provides mock of environment implementation of the Spring's interface, which actually wraps all environment related configuration. And the mock property source is actually the mock which provides the implementation of the property source, which encapsulates access to some property-based configuration which might be required by our classes. In another situation, when we have a dependency which is exposed over JNDI, which means that this is external to our application dependency and it's really hard to provide its implementation. And luckily, Spring provides the support of JNDI. So basically we can specify the mock of our dependency and successfully test our class in isolation way. We have quite similar situation when we are dealing with Servlet API in order to implement some web applications. And it's also hard to implement unit tests for the servlets, and Spring does these things pretty well. So basically we have capabilities to obtain the mock objects for Servlet API and to implement the unit tests for our classes quite easily. So basically there are mocks for filters, for contexts, for request and response, and the listeners. Spring actually provides additional test utils to simplify developers' lives in terms of written the unit tests. In all Spring Framework test util package, there are two quite useful classes like reflection test utils and AOP test utils, which can be used to leverage some logic to write tests where our logic is dependent on reflection or AOP APIs. Spring 5 actually brings support for the latest version of one of the most popular frameworks to write unit tests, which is JUnit 5. And the latest version of JUnit is actually brings full leverage of Java 8 APIs and of course lambdas. Spring actually integrates with JUnit quite good and provides many features, and through the Spring extension there is the implementation of multiple extension APIs from JUnit Jupyter can be injected into the Spring framework. Spring also provides support for enable if and disabled if annotations, using which we can actually implement our unit tests execution which is dependent on some condition. For example, if some properties should be exist within an environment, then our test should be executed. If some file is not available on some file system, on some path, then this test case shouldn't be run. So this is quite powerful ways to configure our testing to be running upon some conditions met.